Welcome back to our channel, True Crime Enthusiasts. I'm John Garfield. In 1995, 18-year-old Christa Pike shocked the world with a barbaric murder, torturing and crushing Colleen Slemmer's skull in a satanic ritual frenzy, keeping a bone shard as a trophy. Now, after nearly 30 agonizing years on death row, Tennessee's Supreme Court has set her execution for September 30th, 2026 by electric chair. Was her youth and traumatic past enough to spare her? Or does such savagery demand the ultimate price? As debates rage over justice, mercy, and the death penalty's cruelty, what do you think? Has time redeemed her or sealed her fate? Before we begin, let us know how you found this video. If you're interested in well-researched true crime stories told with a factual documentary approach, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos coming soon. Before we examine the details of the crime committed by Christa Pike, we need to step back and look at who she was and the environment that shaped her. Understanding what led up to this case is critical. I've reviewed court records, witness statements, and investigative reports, and what stands out is how many warning signs were present long before the murder ever occurred. Picture this. It's the mid-1990s in America, a time when grunge music blared from radios and the country was buzzing with economic optimism, but beneath the surface, programs like Job Corps were scrambling to save troubled teens from broken homes. These weren't your typical high schools. They were havens for dropouts, kids with histories of violence, drug abuse, and family chaos, where supervision was loose, especially after dark, and romantic dramas simmered like a pot ready to boil over. In Knoxville, Tennessee, near the sprawling University of Tennessee campus, that's exactly where the nightmare began on January 12, 1995. What started as an afternoon ploy escalated into a brutal evening of terror stretching into the night, with the violence itself unfolding in a relentless 30-minute frenzy that would shock even seasoned investigators. The scene was a forsaken industrial mill, shrouded by dense woods on the outskirts of town, a perfect hideaway for secrets, far from prying eyes. This wasn't some random spot. It was chosen deliberately, just a stone's throw from the Job Corps dorms where the players in this tragedy lived, schemed, and later tried to act normal. Christa Pike, the 18-year-old at the center of it all, had already built a reputation in that chaotic environment. Fellow students whispered about her obsession with the occult, how she'd rant about Satan not as a religion, but as a tool for power, a way to intimidate and control. "She's not right," one classmate later testified, recalling Pike's threats. "I'd hear her say things like, 'That bitch is going to disappear if she doesn't back off.'" Pike wasn't some clueless kid. She had an above-average IQ, fully aware of her actions' consequences, yet she thrived on the fear she instilled. Born in 1976 in West Virginia, Pike's life was a blueprint for disaster. Divorced parents, neglect, alleged sexual abuse, though contested in court, and the devastating loss of her grandmother at age 12, which triggered self-harm and a deep-seated rage. "I felt like a monster from a young age," Pike confessed in court records, "and Satan was my only friend." This wasn't devout Satanism. It was a crutch for her antisocial tendencies, a mask for her manipulative streak and thirst for dominance. Enter Colleen Slemmer, a 19-year-old classmate who posed no real threat. No history of violence, no schemes to steal Pike's boyfriend. But in Pike's paranoid mind, twisted by abandonment fears, Colleen became the enemy. Slemmer trusted the invitation to smoke weed and make peace in the woods, walking into a trap with no defenses, believing it was just girls sorting out drama. The shock hits hardest in the details. At just 18, barely an adult, Pike orchestrated a group assault that involved savage beatings, slashing skin with sharp objects, carving a pentagram, a satanic symbol, into Slemmer's chest and forehead, and finally crushing her skull with a chunk of concrete. Pike even kept a shard of the skull as a trophy, a chilling sign of her need for control and post-kill thrill. This wasn't solo madness. Accomplices played roles, turning jealousy into collective horror. Red flags waved everywhere. Pike's prior threats went unreported. The Job Corps system turned a blind eye to her escalating weirdness. If only someone had intervened. But as the sun set that fateful day, Pike's simmering grudge crystallized into a deadly plan. What twisted impulse would drive her to lure an innocent girl into the darkness? The bloodbath was just hours away. Now that we've established the background, we move into the next section, where we examine the crime itself in detail. Prepare yourself. What happened next is deeply disturbing and difficult to reconcile with the fact that those involved were barely 18 years old. For the whole incident, On January 12, 1995, in Knoxville, Tennessee, Christa Pike convinced her 17-year-old boyfriend, Daryl Shipp, and their friend Shadola Peterson to join her in confronting Colleen Slemmer, a 19-year-old classmate Pike delusionally believed was trying to steal Shipp away. "We're just going to talk it out, smoke some weed, and make peace," Pike allegedly cooed to Slemmer in the dorms, her voice laced with false sweetness, drawing the trusting girl into the trap. Slemmer, with no history of aggression and no inkling of the betrayal ahead, agreed without hesitation. She didn't arm herself, didn't suspect a thing. This wasn't random, it was premeditated deception, the first thread in a web of cruelty. The group set out as dusk fell, walking casually through the dense woods flanking the University of Tennessee campus, their footsteps crunching on frozen leaves like an ominous countdown. The destination, an abandoned industrial mill, isolated and shrouded in shadows, chosen for its seclusion, no witnesses, no escape routes. "Come on, it's just up here," Pike urged, her tone shifting from friendly to commanding as they ventured deeper into the gloom. The site was perfect for Pike's twisted vision, remote enough to muffle screams, dark enough to amplify terror. Slemmer, still oblivious, chatted lightly, perhaps hoping to mend whatever imaginary rift existed. But as they arrived at the derelict structure, the facade crumbled. There was no weed, no reconciliation, only violence erupting almost immediately. A brutal ambush that caught Slemmer off guard. Pike struck first, her fists flying in a frenzy of punches and kicks, overwhelming Slemmer, who crumpled to the ground, dazed and defenseless. Shipp and Peterson didn't intervene. Instead, they piled on, turning the assault into a group frenzy. "You think you can take him from me?" Pike snarled, her words echoing in the cold air as recounted in Peterson's later testimony. The initial beating was savage, blows to the face, stomach, and back, but it was just the prelude. What followed was 30 minutes of pure torture, a deliberate prolongation designed not for quick death, but for humiliation and control. Pike grabbed a sharp object, a box cutter or a shard of glass, details vary in accounts, and began slashing Slemmer's skin, carving deep gashes across her arms and torso. Then came the ritualistic horror. Pike etched a pentagram, the 5-pointed star symbolizing her satanic fascinations, into Slemmer's chest and forehead, the lines deliberate and deep, blood welling up like ink on a demonic canvas. This wasn't mere rage. It was a performance of power, Pike reveling in the symbolism as if drawing strength from the occult. Through it all, Slemmer's pleas pierced the night. "Please stop. We're friends. Why are you doing this?" she sobbed, her voice breaking as she curled into a fetal position, tears mixing with blood. She begged for mercy, calling out their names, but her cries only seemed to fuel Pike's sadism. No effective resistance came. Slemmer was outnumbered, unarmed, and in shock, fully aware of her impending doom, which amplified the crime's barbarity in the eyes of investigators later. Finally, as Slemmer lay weakened and gasping, Pike spotted a chunk of asphalt or concrete nearby. With chilling resolve, she hoisted it high and smashed it down repeatedly on Slemmer's head, the impacts cracking bone with sickening thuds until the skull shattered, life extinguishing in a pool of gore. Death was instantaneous at that point, but Pike wasn't done. Even in the aftermath, Pike's detachment was eerie. She knelt beside the body, pried loose a fragment of skull, a macabre trophy, and pocketed it. A rare behavior psychologist linked to antisocial personality disorder and a killer's need for souvenirs to relive the thrill. Shipp and Peterson watched in silence, complicit to the end. The group then simply walked away, leaving Slemmer's mutilated remains in the dirt. No calls for help, no remorse evident. Pike, according to witnesses who saw her later, appeared calm, even smug, as if the act had empowered her. Legally, this was first-degree murder with aggravating factors, premeditation, torture, and ritual elements that screamed intent and depravity, laying the groundwork for prosecutors to demand the ultimate penalty. But in those first hours after the bloodbath, Pike believed she'd gotten away with it, the body hidden, the secret shared only among the guilty. Little did she know, her arrogance would unravel everything. How long could such a gruesome truth stay buried? The hunt was about to begin. Based on everything we've examined so far, it becomes clear that Pike's actions were not spontaneous or accidental. They were deliberate, sustained, and driven by a need for control. In the next section, we'll look at what happened after the murder, how law enforcement responded, and whether the system moved quickly enough to deliver justice. In the pre-dawn hours of January 13, 1995, as Knoxville slept under a blanket of winter chill, Christa Pike returned to her Job Corps dorm with a secret that burned too hot to contain. She didn't bury the evidence or whisper it to the shadows. No, Pike's fatal flaw was her ego. High on the adrenaline of the kill, she started boasting almost immediately, cornering fellow students into dimly lit halls and common areas. "I just killed a girl," she'd say with a twisted grin, her voice carrying that eerie mix of pride and detachment, as later recounted by witnesses. But words weren't enough. Pike pulled out the grisly proof, a shard of human skull, still flecked with blood and tissue, waving it like a trophy from some macabre game. "See this? It's from her head," she bragged to one horrified classmate, then another, repeating the story with chilling consistency, as if reliving the thrill made it more real. This wasn't a one-off slip. Pike's compulsion to flaunt her deed turned whispers into a chorus, and soon enough, a tipster among the students alerted Job Corps staff, who wasted no time relaying the bombshell to the Knoxville Police Department. The KPD sprang into action that same day, treating the report not as idle gossip, but as a credible lead on a potential homicide. Detectives knew the Job Corps crowd, a melting pot of troubled teens with loose supervision where threats and drama were commonplace, but this smelled different, too specific, too grotesque. They started with the basics, interviewing the tipsters who described Pike's boasts in vivid detail, including her mentions of a fight in the woods near the University of Tennessee. No body had been reported missing yet, but the skull fragment screamed foul play. Armed with verbal sketches of the scene, an abandoned mill in the forested outskirts, search teams fanned out, combing the area on foot in the fading light. It wasn't high-tech wizardry. No cameras or GPS tracked the killer's path. Instead, it was old-school legwork, guided by the suspect's own loose lips and the terrain's familiarity to the group. By evening, they found it. Colleen Slemmer's battered body sprawled in the dirt amid the ruins, her face unrecognizable from the pummeling, her chest and forehead etched with that damning pentagram, and her skull caved in like a shattered eggshell. Forensics would later confirm the nightmare. The bulk of the cuts and carvings happened while she was alive, non-fatal wounds meant to prolong the agony, with the concrete blows as the merciless finale. This wasn't an accident or a quick scuffle. It was deliberate, ritualistic cruelty, elevating the case to especially heinous in legal terms, the kind that screams for maximum punishment. With the body secured, the net tightened. Pike was hauled in for questioning on January 14, just 36 hours after the murder, a blistering pace driven by her self-sabotage. She didn't lawyer up right away, another rookie mistake born of overconfidence. Sitting across from detectives in a stark interrogation room, Pike stayed eerily calm, no tears, no panic. "We were just going to scare her," she claimed coolly, admitting her presence but downplaying the savagery. Things got out of hand. But the details didn't add up. The torture's duration, the pentagram's precision, the lack of defensive wounds on Slemmer painted a picture of calculated sadism, not chaos. Investigators seized the skull fragment from Pike's possessions, a direct DNA link that shredded any denial. They separated her from Shipp and Peterson, grilling them individually to cross-check stories. Shipp clammed up at first, but Peterson cracked under pressure, her account aligning with the forensics, the luring, the slashes, the carving, the fatal blows, all with Pike as the ringleader. Peterson's willingness to cooperate sealed her fate as a state's witness, while Shipp and Pike faced the full brunt. Arrests came swift that day, first-degree murder charges with aggravating factors for the torture and ritual elements, no bail for Pike, her file rocketing to state prosecutors. Local media pounced, headlines screaming about the Satanic teen killer in Knoxville, a female perp barely out of high school, amplifying public outrage and piling pressure on the DA to go hard. Job Corps came under fire too, whispers of ignored red flags, Pike's prior threats, her rants about murder, highlighting a system that failed to intervene. Slemmer's family, notified only after the arrests, reeled in horror, their grief compounded by the refusal to return the skull shard for burial. It was core evidence, locked away. "We just want to lay her whole." Her mother pleaded in interviews, her voice breaking, fueling demands for justice. But as Pike sat in a cell, the real trial loomed. Would her composure hold in court, or would the weight of her boasts bury her? By March 1996, the Knoxville courthouse buzzed with tension, a media frenzy swirling around one of Tennessee's most gruesome cases. The trial unfolded in the state criminal court, drawing crowds and reporters eager for every lurid detail of the 1995 slaying, a story of teen jealousy twisted into satanic horror that captivated and repulsed the public. Christa Pike, the 18-year-old ringleader, stood as the main defendant. Her trial bifurcated into two phases under Tennessee law. First, guilt, then sentencing. Ted Earl Shipp, her boyfriend, faced his own proceedings as an adult, while Shadola Peterson cut a deal, turning state's witness for probation. Colleen Slemmer's family sat stone-faced in the gallery, their presence a silent accusation amid the flashbulbs. Prosecutors painted Pike as a cold architect of evil, hammering home the premeditated savagery. "This is one of the most barbaric acts I've ever seen," the lead attorney thundered, detailing the 30-minute torture, the beatings, the slashes, the pentagram carved into Slemmer's living flesh as a ritualistic flourish, and Pike's crowning depravity, snapping off a skull fragment as a souvenir. They argued it wasn't just murder, but first-degree slaughter with aggravating factors, emphasizing Pike's pauses to savor Slemmer's agony, her post-kill boasts as evidence of enjoyment and zero remorse. Forensics backed it up. Autopsy reports showed most wounds inflicted while Slemmer was conscious, her pleas ignored in a display of power Pike seemed to relish. Peterson's testimony was damning. She described Pike directing the assault with a laugh, ordering the pentagram as if scripting a demonic play. Job Corps witnesses piled on, recounting Pike's gleeful show and tell with the bone shard, turning her arrogance into ironclad proof. Defense attorneys fought back, humanizing Pike as a product of hellish trauma, divorced parents, neglect, alleged abuse, and the grandmother's death that shattered her at 12, sparking self-harm and a descent into occult fantasies. They paraded family and experts, arguing her high IQ masked deep psychological scars, pushing for diminished capacity or life without parole. "She's a victim too," one lawyer pleaded, but the jury wasn't swayed. The evaluation showed Pike knew right from wrong, her manipulation of accomplices proving calculated intent. Pike herself sat impassive, no apologies, no tears, her blank stare fueling the prosecution's narrative of an unrepentant evil girl, as headlines dubbed her. The satanic angle exploded in the press, amplifying calls for justice amid public outrage. Guilt came swift in Phase 1. Phase 2 sealed her fate. Jurors, unmoved by mitigators like her youth or background, found the torture especially heinous, voting death by electric chair, plus 25 years for conspiracy. Shipp got life. Peterson walked free. Slemmer's mother spoke through sobs. "You've taken everything from us," her words tipping the emotional scale toward maximum penalty. No hung jury, no delays. The verdict was unanimous and quick, a precedent for Tennessee's death row. But as Pike was led away in chains, the real marathon began. Automatic appeals that would drag on for decades. Would her past ever earn mercy, or was this monster beyond redemption? Next, we turn to the moment that ultimately changed everything. The legal turning point that finally determined her fate after years of delays, appeals, and unanswered questions within the justice system. The gavel's echo in that 1996 Knoxville courtroom marked not an end, but the beginning of Christa Pike's long, shadowy limbo on death row. A sentence of electric chair plus 25 years for conspiracy that Tennessee law mandated be followed by automatic appeals, stalling any swift justice. Transferred to the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center in Nashville, Pike entered a world of ironclad isolation, her days confined to a solitary cell for 23 hours at a stretch, with minimal human contact beyond the clank of meal trays and the watchful eyes of guards. This wasn't just punishment. It was a psychological siege. Every letter she penned, often lengthy rants justifying her past or blaming her fractured childhood, scrutinized and filed away, revealing no direct apologies to Slemmer's family, only a persistent pattern of deflection. Those early years behind bars didn't break her spirit. If anything, they honed her edge, turning the young killer into a caged predator who viewed the system as another arena for control. Pike's volatility erupted in 2001, shattering any illusion of reform. In a fit of rage, during a rare moment of shared space, she targeted fellow inmate Patricia Jones, looping a shoelace around her neck and squeezing with lethal intent. Jones gasped for air, teetering on the brink of death until intervention saved her. Pike's casual dismissal? "I just wanted her to shut up." She reportedly sneered in her statement, a chilling echo of her lack of empathy that earned her an additional 25-year sentence for attempted murder. Prosecutors seized on it as proof positive. This wasn't a rehabilitated soul, but a high-risk offender whose violence simmered undiminished, even in chains. The incident wasn't isolated. Pike racked up a string of lesser infractions, defying orders, stirring tensions with cellmates, playing the victim card when disciplined, claiming unfair treatment without evidence. Internal probes dismissed her complaints, painting a portrait of a woman who manipulated from the shadows, her above-average IQ weaponized not for growth, but for survival games within the prison walls. By 2012, Pike's cunning escalated into outright conspiracy. She wove a web of emotional entanglement with guard Justin Heflin and acquaintance Donald Cohat, exploiting flirtations and promises to plot an escape. Whispers of smuggled tools and coordinated breaks leaked out, but the scheme crumbled under scrutiny. Heflin fired, Cohat slapped with 7 years. Pike hit with internal sanctions that further blackened her record. This wasn't mere boredom. It was a testament to her enduring antisocial traits, a refusal to surrender control even after decades. Those years on death row didn't mellow Pike. They just gave her more time to refine her manipulative prowess, shifting from outright rebellion to a calculated facade of calm, spinning tales of trauma for appeal hearings, while her core remained untouched by remorse. Unlike many death row inmates who crumbled into depression or madness, Pike held firm, her psyche resilient in its darkness, making her a case study in criminology circles for female killers and trophy-taking behaviors, though she never cooperated with researchers. Appeals dragged on relentlessly, Pike's lawyers hammering her youth at the time of the crime, just 18, her alleged childhood abuse and mental health woes as grounds for mercy. Courts rebuffed them time and again, citing her clear awareness and the crime's premeditation. In a bizarre 2001 twist, Pike petitioned to drop her appeals, craving a quicker end, only to retract it later, her flip-flop branded as impulsive instability rather than genuine contrition. These prison escapades, the assault, the plot, were weaponized against her in every review, cited as continuing dangerousness that torpedoed clemency bids, proving she posed an unrelenting threat if ever freed. No real rehabilitation programs stuck. Her files screamed, "not reformed," a damning label in a system wary of second chances for the irredeemable. As 2025 waned, Pike lingered in that Nashville fortress, her options dwindling, the appeals exhausted. Her prison saga wasn't just waiting for death. It was a slow reveal of a monster unbowed, her actions behind bars sealing her fate more than the original sin. But with the electric chair's shadow looming for 2026, could one final plea sway the scales, or was this the inexorable march to execution? Nearly 3 decades after her 1996 conviction for the ritualistic slaughter of Colleen Slemmer, a first-degree murder laced with aggravating horrors like prolonged torture, pentagram carvings, and that macabre's skull trophy, Christa Pike remained Tennessee's sole female death row inmate. Her sentence a cocktail of capital punishment plus stacked prison terms for later crimes. Appeals had churned relentlessly since the gavel fell, her lawyers volleying arguments about her tender age of 18 at the time of the killing, a childhood riddled with alleged abuse and neglect, and mental health fractures that supposedly clouded her judgment. Courts swatted them down repeatedly, deeming Pike fully cognizant, her high IQ and orchestration of accomplices proof of cold calculation rather than youthful impulse. In a surreal 2001 pivot, Pike even begged to waive further fights, craving a swift end, only to retract it, a flip-flop judges branded as erratic inconsistency, not redemption. These battles stretched her death row stint to an agonizing 30 years, a limbo critics decry as death row phenomenon, psychological torment beyond the sentence, where endless waits erode the soul, though courts countered that Pike's own appeals fueled the delay. The endgame crystallized on September 30, 2025, when the Tennessee Supreme Court issued its order scheduling Pike's execution for exactly 1 year later, September 30, 2026. This decree slammed the door on her marathon of legal lifelines, thrusting the case into enforcement mode. The method? Electric chair, a relic of Tennessee's penal past, sparking fresh debates on its brutality, searing pain versus humane alternatives, though it held firm as constitutional. In their final assessments, judges underscored Pike's unyielding danger. Prison assaults, escape plots, and a litany of infractions painted her as unreformed, her brain's supposed immaturity at 18 irrelevant against evidence of premeditated sadism and ongoing menace. If carried out, Pike's death would etch history, the first woman executed in Tennessee in over 2 centuries, and among the youngest in America's post-1976 death penalty era. It sets a stark precedent, reinforcing hardline stances on especially heinous crimes where torture and lack of remorse trump mitigators like trauma. Public discourse rages, personal accountability versus childhood scars, deterrence versus vengeance, the ethics of frying a brain that neuroscience says wasn't fully wired at the crime's cusp. Academics dissect it as a textbook on female teen killers, trophy-taking psyches, and continuing dangerousness, her prison antics dooming any clemency. Pike's legacy? A grim mirror to justice's paradoxes, a system that dangles death but delivers decades of dread, failing to heal victims' kin or prevent the rot of unchecked youth rage. Slemmer's family finds legal closure, yet no resurrection. Society grapples with warnings ignored, from Job Corps oversights to abuse's scars. 30 years on death row begs the unanswered. Is justice in the kill or in the endless wait for it? As 2026 looms, Pike's story endures, a chilling emblem of extremity and systemic snags. That brings today's video to an end. If you found this video relevant or valuable, please like and share it so others can watch as well. Give your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for future videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.